can't lay off the tall ones.
How you doing? How about a little one-on-one? What do you say? You got some moves on you, girl. If you don't want to play basketball, I know some other indoor sports. Come on now, give me the ball.
Okay, I got a new game. Tag.
Ripley? Ripley. You've had enough fun.
The hell are you?
Okay. This is another one of those outlandish topics toward which I find myself gravitating since I'm running dry of material. Nonetheless, though, it's an intriguing topic because if you believe in aliens coming to Earth in the first place, then why would it be such an outlandish leap for them to insert themselves into our society, you know, to live among us for whatever reason? Or if you believe in other dimensions, like the religious people, you know, angels, demons, then why would those beings not try to deduce a way to live among us? You know, the world's religions have been saying that they've done precisely that for ages and ages. All the world's religions. So with that in mind, here goes. Now, if you want to get up to snuff on this topic, your point man is going to be Dr. David Jacobs. He's been studying this for a long time, and he started out hypnotizing folks who had been supposedly kidnapped by aliens. And the more he did it, the more he began to see and realize that they were not just kidnapping folks. They were kidnapping folks and breeding them and putting the offspring here on Earth. I'll just read this. David Jacobs is a retired professor who has written extensively about the phenomenon of alien abductions. He has interviewed numerous people who claim to have been abducted by extraterrestrials, and he has developed a theory about the purpose of these abductions. According to Jacobs, aliens are conducting a hybrid breeding program, creating a new species that is part human and part alien. These hybrids will eventually replace humans as the dominant species on Earth. Now, there have been a lot of people investigate alien abductions, and there have been a lot of people hypnotizing folks and what have you. Carla Turner, John Mack. But he's the only one, I think, who's observed this. But let's just see what he has to say about it here. Let's see here.
And for the first time, I began to hear stories in the year 2003 about people who are hybrids who are living here, who I call hybrids. They do not look like hybrids. They look like humans. They have been bred to look average. They're going to be average size, average weight. They're not going to have anything distinctive about their faces. They're not going to talk any unusual way. They're just going to be average. The ones who aren't average are culled. They're culled out there. They don't make it down to the ground. And people began to describe helping them get along here on Earth. So when they come down, abductees have been teaching them on board a UFO for years. They've been teaching them what a dog is and why people have dogs, for example, and what a goat is. These are, I'm using actual examples that I did not put in this book, but I put in a previous book, The Threat, what you use a goat for and things like that. But when they come down, finally, when they're in their, let's just say, late teens, young adult age, when they begin to show up, they don't know anything. No matter how much has been taught to them, there are millions of things, literally, that babies and small children and kids absorb just through observation by living here as humans that they don't know. For example, they have to, when they're young and being taught on board by abductees, they ask questions like, why do you use a plate? What's a plate for? Why do you put food on a plate? This is a question that no human being would ever ask, at least none in Western society. And when they come down after being taught for years and years, and now they're 17 or 18 or 20 years old, they are babes in the woods. They have to be taught how to shop, how to go to a supermarket. They have to be taught what an egg is. They have to be taught what you say when you go up to the cash register, and they're always with an abductee when this happens, and the cash register and the person behind the register says, "Hey, how you doing?" or "How are you?" or something like that. They can't just stand there. They have to reply, "Oh, I'm doing okay, fine, whatever." They have to say something in return that has to be taught to them.
Right.
So it goes on like this in the most astonishing way that it's almost impossible to imagine the level of teaching that goes on and the simplicity of it. And I have a lot of transcripts in this book to drive that notion home from a bunch of different people who are doing this.
But you were never, did you ever try to seek out to meet one of these hybrids, these human hybrids, human-alien hybrids?
I knew the address of where one was living. It was 125 miles away from me, and I drove up, and I knew which apartment it was, but I didn't want to be hanging around this little parking lot in front. Starting in 2003, when I began to hear about these aliens.
Okay, what's a goat for? My goodness, I guess they better steer them clear of Muslim countries. They might find a lot of different uses for goats. Oh, my goodness. Anyhow, that's David Jacobs, and he's pretty much the point man for this topic. So anyway, let's continue. Next is Richard Dolan. He's pretty popular in the UFO community. He's kind of like the Papi Chulo of flying saucers. But anyway, let me read what I had here, and then we'll watch what he says about the whole thing. In his book, UFOs and the National Security State, Richard Dolan discusses the possibility that extraterrestrials beings may be living among humans on Earth. Dolan cites numerous anecdotal accounts of individuals who claim to have encountered these beings, describing them as having a mix of human and alien traits. These beings are said to possess advanced technology and knowledge, and some have even reportedly assumed human identities in order to blend in with society. So let's just see what he has to say here. Come on, there we go. Oh, I hope we don't get a commercial. Okay.
Ben, but I'm just going to say this. Has there been the possibility of an infiltration by some of them into our world? I think the answer is yes. Has to be considered as possible. You'd be a fool to pretend that it's impossible. And so then what you look for is, what evidence could be used to support this? And the only evidence that I could use to support it is the research of various UFO researchers who have developed and collected their own stories of interaction with human-looking non-humans. There's a lot of those. I've encountered a few of them myself from people. They're quite compelling. I do think that there's an element.
Just a moment. You've encountered a few.
I've spoken
human-looking aliens.
Not me personally. I've interviewed a number of people who were quite credible to me. One was a retired U.S. Air Force colonel with a PhD who had a hell of an experience. I've talked about it from time. I can mention it here. I spoke to a woman who actually I liked her story even more. Housewife from Western Pennsylvania. I met her 15 years ago at a conference. She came up to my table. I was selling some books, with her husband. And she said, I just want to tell you this crazy story that happened to me in 1965 when I was 15 years old. So I said, all right, go. So she was in church with her mother in this tiny little town in Western Pennsylvania, where she said everyone knew everyone, especially in church, she said. And so she's with her mom, and she said this couple walked in to sat in front of her. She said they were like supermodels. They were absolute male, female. She said they were just like gorgeous Hollywood, blonde. She said they had this most perfect blue clothing that she had ever seen. And she, I think, even implied, like, as a 15-year-old girl, I was kind of obsessed with fashion, all of that. But she's studying the fabric of what they were wearing. She said it was the most amazing, like they were the most amazing spectacle in this church. And she said, I was shocked that no one was looking at them. She said, I was mesmerized by them. I couldn't take my eyes off them. And they seemed like they didn't quite fit in. And then she said to me, and that's when I could hear them in my mind. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, I could hear them thinking to each other. They weren't talking. I could hear them thinking. I said, well, what were they thinking? She said, well, it was kind of like one was saying to the other, well, we appear to be fitting in pretty well here. And then the other one said, yes, except for the girl behind us who can hear us. This is what she said to me. And I'll pause and I'll just say, this woman was eminently believable to me. It's absolutely credible. So to continue, she hears this telepathically, I guess. And she was kind of shocked. Who wouldn't be? And she said, at that point, though, I didn't hear anything else from them. So it was as if they knew this security breach and they shut it down. So they go through the rest of church. This is a Catholic mass, by the way. And she was almost amused by the fact that they didn't seem to know how to act within a Catholic mass. I grew up going to Catholic mass, so sit, kneel, do the sign of the cross, you get up, you do all these different things, all these motions. They were looking around to try to do it right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the mass ends finally, and she's fascinated by them, of course. And they get up and they they're out of the church immediately. They jump out of the crowd and they're gone. And she gets in her mind that she is going to follow them. So her mother was sitting next to her, oblivious to the whole scenario. The young woman who's telling me the story gets up and she works her way through the crowd. Her mother is yelling, "Get back here, young lady. Where do you think you're going? What are you doing? What's going on?" And the girl just goes. So she gets to the front of the church and she sees the couple. And they've walked across this big parking lot and they're going over this little crest of a hill. And she scoots across the parking lot. She gets to the top of the hill. She sees them. They're walking down this field toward a wooded area. And she starts down after them. And then she stops dead in her tracks because she sees...
Okay, so anyway, that's that story. And, you know, sounds interesting. He has another story about some guy who saw some people in a Las Vegas casino. I think that if I were telepathic, I would go to Las Vegas a lot, you know, and listen to what the blackjack dealer was saying in his head while I was fleecing him. But at any rate, that's Richard Dolan, and he's a pretty credible fellow, or he seems he is anyway. So let's continue on, because this let's do some analysis next and talk about, assuming that this is true, talk about what's going on. Everything in this video assumes that they're telling the truth, Jacobs and what have you. Jacobs especially, I mean, he could just be lying. He could just be lying to sell books because, you know, he needs the money. Maybe he didn't save up for retirement very well. Maybe his daughter has cancer. Who knows? But maybe he's just trying to make money. People do that all the time. In the Bigfoot community, it's terrible. People will just make up a bunch of shit and pass it off as Bigfoot research. But anyway, let's just analyze, assuming this were actually happening, let's just analyze why it might be happening. Let's analogize it to the European colonization of the world, especially in South America, Central America. You know, they wanted the resources, and they wanted the populace to do the labor for them, right? They wanted the gold, they wanted all that shit, and they wanted the poor Mexicans to just have to work their ass off to mine it for them. That's really, I mean, and that seems to me might be very well why they're doing it. Why wouldn't it be? The alien religious institutions, they would probably want to get their mitts on us, so they would have more power over the secular authorities. That's certainly what Rome wanted to do back then. They wanted to Christianize all the natives so that they would be able to more efficiently extort the secular authorities into bowing to their will. And they could be needing the resources, I mean, to fuel their own economies, of course, but also to enhance their power against other nationalities. You know, what makes you think that aliens don't have countries, different power structures? And what makes you think that aliens don't have money? Why not? So anyway, that's kind of how I see the matter. But, you know, who knows? You know, there are some laws in the universe that are immutable, and I think that they would apply to just about any species. Really. But anyway, oh, that's it. Bye.